You ever have one of those weeks where everything feels just fine, and then, out of nowhere, life just flips you the bird? Yeah, that was me, a few months ago. My name's Ryan. I'm 34, work in IT for a small logistics company, and live in a decent apartment just outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy, but I've built a quiet, drama-free life. No crazy exes, no wild parties, just me, my dog Bandit, and my PlayStation, until the letter showed up. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because I'd just gotten back from a painfully boring status meeting. I grabbed my mail on autopilot, the usual junk, grocery flyers, a cable promo I didn't ask for, and then one plain white envelope with no return address. My name was handwritten in a neat, almost too careful script, weird but not unheard of. Inside, a single-page legal notice. You are hereby notified of legal action being taken against you for unpaid child support and college contribution for Alyssa in accordance with. I stopped reading. My stomach dropped, because the name on the document was my ex-girlfriend's daughter, a girl I hadn't seen in over 12 years. A girl who, as far as I knew, was not mine. Her mom, Heather, and I had dated back when I was 21 and dumb. She was older, 25 at the time, with a toddler and a complicated past. We were together for maybe a year and a half. I liked her kid, sure. She was sweet, called me Riri. I even babysat a few times while Heather worked late. But I never adopted her, never signed any papers, and when Heather and I split, she told me point blank, "You're not her dad, we're better off this way." Harsh, but I moved on. So why, over a decade later, was I getting legal papers demanding I help pay for college tuition? I called the number listed for the firm. The receptionist seemed clueless but took my info and said someone would be in touch. Next day, I got a call from Heather herself. No warning, just, "Ryan, we need to talk about your responsibilities." I was floored. "Heather, what the hell is going on?" "You told me. I told you what I thought was best at the time," she said, all cool and smug. "But the court recognizes emotional parenthood. You were involved. You contributed. That makes you liable." "Liable? Heather, I was a broke 21-year-old kid playing stepdad for a year. I was more of a glorified babysitter than anything." She didn't flinch. "You made promises, Ryan." "I have proof." Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I know bluffing when I hear it. I never promised anything. I sure as hell didn't sign anything. But she sounded so confident, it shook me. I told her not to call again until I had a lawyer, and I hung up. But I couldn't sleep that night. Was there some weird legal loophole she could use? Could an old email or a dumb birthday card be twisted into proof? Had I done something stupid without realizing it? The next day, I asked around the office for a good attorney, and someone pointed me to this guy named Mark who specialized in family law. I booked a consult. He was calm, methodical, and blunt. "This kind of case is rare, but not impossible," he said, leafing through the scanned letter I'd brought. "Ohio has something called equitable parent doctrine, but it's very case-specific." "Meaning?" "Meaning, if she can prove you acted like the father, intended to be the father, and the child relied on you as the father, then yes, in some cases, the court might consider you responsible. But usually, only if you actively petition for custody or support at some point. Which I never did." Still, something about his tone made my skin crawl. He asked, "Do you know for sure the child isn't biologically yours?" "I mean, we never did a test, but Heather told me point blank back then I wasn't." Mark nodded, slowly. "I'd get that in writing if I were you." I left his office feeling unsteady. Like the ground beneath my memories had started to crack. That night, I did what I should have done a long time ago. I opened up my old email account I hadn't touched in years. Had to go through about 5 password resets, but eventually I got in. Scrolled back through the archives. Found a few old messages from Heather, mostly just logistics stuff. One caught my eye. "Thanks again for picking up Jess today. You're a lifesaver. I know you're not her dad, but you're the closest thing she's had to one lately, and she adores you." Okay. That didn't sound great in hindsight. I kept digging, until I found something far more disturbing. An email I'd never opened. Timestamp 2 months after we broke up. Subject line: "I made a mistake." I opened it. And my heart stopped. "Ryan, I think I screwed up. I told you you're not Jess's dad, but there's a chance you might be. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to deal with everything." I didn't want to scare you off. But now that you're gone, I don't know what to do. I just stared at the screen, rereading it. Over and over. She might have known all along? That was 12 years ago. I never saw it. Never replied. And she never brought it up again. Now I had no idea what the truth was. And if I wanted to fight this in court, and not get steamrolled, I needed proof. But I also needed answers. So, I did something crazy. I sent a message to Jess, the girl I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. She's 18 now, apparently in college. I found her through social media. It was short and simple. Hey Jess, this is Ryan. I know this is out of the blue, but can we talk? It's important. I think there's something you should know. No response. At least, not right away. But the next morning, I woke up to this message sitting in my inbox. I've been waiting for you to reach out. There's something I need to tell you too. But I can't do it over text. What the hell is going on? Is there a chance I'm her dad? Or is Heather just playing some long con? And what does Jess know that she couldn't say over text? So there I was, standing in my living room with this ridiculous court notice in my hand, trying not to throw it across the room. I hadn't spoken to Heather in years. We weren't on bad terms or anything, we were just over. She wanted different things, I moved on, and that was that. Except now, apparently, she wanted child support for Alyssa, a child she very clearly told me wasn't mine when we broke up. Back then, she'd just gotten back in touch with an old fling, and I remember how quickly everything shifted. One minute we were picking out names together, the next she was packing her stuff and telling me, "You're a good man, but this isn't your baby." It crushed me at the time, sure. I wanted to be a dad. But I respected her honesty and moved on. Now fast forward nearly 2 decades, and suddenly she's acting like I'd been a deadbeat? Nah. Something was seriously off. I called my friend Luke. He's a paralegal and pretty sharp when it comes to this kind of nonsense. I read the letter out to him over the phone and he goes, "Dude, she's banking on you being too shocked or too broke to fight this. You need a lawyer yesterday." So I took his advice and found a local family attorney named Rachel, who reviewed everything with me. And get this, Heather had actually backdated some of the paperwork. She was claiming I'd verbally agreed to support Alyssa and had been avoiding my obligations ever since. Rachel just shook her head and said, "This is either the sloppiest fraud I've seen, or the most desperate." Naturally, I told her everything, how Heather had told me the baby wasn't mine, how we hadn't even spoken in years, how I'd never once claimed to be the father after the breakup. Then I asked what I thought was a dumb question. "Can we just do a DNA test?" Rachel looked at me like I just handed her a golden ticket. "Yes. But we can do one better." She filed a motion for a court-ordered paternity test as part of our response. If Heather wanted to drag this into the courtroom, then fine, let's go all the way. What I didn't expect was what came next. About a week later, I got a message request on Facebook. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Alyssa. She said, "Hey, I know this is random, but I just wanted to ask, were you ever in a relationship with my mom around 2005? My stomach dropped. I didn't know what to say. I mean, yeah, I was. But I didn't even know if she knew anything about the court stuff. I replied honestly, "Yeah, I was. We broke up before you were born." "Why do you ask?" She sent back, "My mom's been acting really weird lately. She keeps saying someone abandoned us, and she's been crying a lot. I found a photo of you two together, and I just wanted to know if any of it's true." I didn't want to drag Alyssa into the drama. She was just a kid caught in her mom's mess. But I also wasn't about to let Heather twist the story. So I told her the truth. "I'm sorry your mom's going through a tough time, but I was never told you were mine. In fact, she made it very clear back then that I wasn't the father." She just sent back, "I had a feeling." The next court date couldn't come fast enough. When we walked in, Heather looked different. Not smug, not furious. Just tired. But that didn't stop her from putting on a performance for the judge. She claimed I had abandoned them, that I'd made verbal promises to support Alyssa, and even had the nerve to say I'd signed a birthday card when Alyssa was 6 that said, "Love, Dad." I turned to my lawyer, whispering, "I've never even seen that card." Rachel stood up and calmly dismantled every piece of evidence Heather brought. She asked about phone records, emails, texts, anything that could support these so-called promises. Heather fumbled. She started sweating. The judge asked if she had any documentation of my acknowledgement of paternity. She stammered out something about verbal agreements. That's when Rachel slid a file across the table. The court ordered DNA test. We had done it quietly, using a hairbrush I still had from our time living together that had a strand of my hair. The judge had allowed it under the circumstances, and the lab rushed the result due to the ongoing litigation. The results were printed, signed, and sealed. And they were clear: probability of paternity, 0%. You could hear a pin drop in that courtroom. The judge slowly looked over the paperwork. Then he turned to Heather and said something I'll never forget. "Ms. Simmons, you brought this case under oath. These documents prove not only that Mr. Taylor is not the biological father of the child in question, but that your claims were knowingly false." Then came the twist I really didn't expect. Rachel stood up and added, "Your Honor, we'd also like to submit evidence suggesting Ms. Simmons attempted to falsify documentation and mislead the court, in violation of civil procedure and possibly criminal statute." Heather's face went ghost white. I didn't even know Rachel had prepared that part. Turns out, Heather had altered the dates on old photos and used them to create the illusion of an ongoing relationship. Rachel had done some forensic analysis on the metadata, and it all came out in court. The judge stared at Heather for a long moment, then said, "I'm ordering a recess. Bailiff, please escort Ms. Simmons to the back. We'll be discussing whether to refer this for prosecution." Wait. What? Was Heather actually getting arrested? She looked back at me one last time, not with anger, but with some twisted mix of shame and desperation. And just like that, she was led away. After court ended, I didn't feel the victory I thought I would. You'd think I'd be pumping my fists, walking out like some kind of hero from a courtroom drama, but honestly, I just felt hollow. Heather wasn't some stranger. We shared real history. We almost built a family once. Now she'd walked herself into a trap of her own making, and the wreckage left behind was Alyssa. That night, I was sitting on my porch with a beer, just trying to breathe again, when my phone buzzed. It was another message from Alyssa. "I saw the court results. Mom called me from jail." My heart dropped. I had no idea how much she knew, or what Heather might have told her. I expected anger, blame, some defensive rant about how I ruined her mother's life. But instead, the next message hit way harder than I expected. "Did you ever want me to be yours?" I just sat there, staring at the screen. That one question cracked me open in a way nothing else had. Because the truth was, yeah, when I was 21 and dumb and in love with Heather, I did want to be a dad. I bought a onesie. I daydreamed about baby names. I even learned how to install a car seat from some grainy YouTube video. But then Heather shut the door on all of it. And I respected that. Or at least I thought I had to. So I replied, "Back then, yeah? I thought I was. I would have stepped up without hesitation." Alyssa didn't respond for a few minutes. Then finally, "I think I always wished you were." That hit me harder than any court ruling. Apparently, Heather had never mentioned me until a couple of years ago. She'd always referred to Alyssa's father as some loser who bailed. But when Alyssa found an old shoebox of photos hidden in the attic, one with me holding her as a newborn, the story shifted. That was the first time she ever heard my name. She said Heather told her, "He didn't want to be part of your life." It made me sick. I asked her if she was okay, not just about the court stuff, but emotionally. She said she was confused, mostly. Angry, yeah? But also relieved, because something finally made sense. Mom's been spiraling for a while. We couldn't afford college. She said she had a plan? I thought she meant a scholarship or loan or something, not this. That's when she sent the kicker. I don't know if this is weird, but can I still talk to you? I didn't answer right away. Because honestly, I didn't know. I'm not her father. Not biologically. Not legally. And definitely not in a way that fits neatly into any box society recognizes. But I couldn't ignore the fact that a scared, blindsided 17-year-old had reached out to me, not the guy Heather originally claimed was her dad. Why? Because even though Heather tried to erase me from the story, the truth had its own gravity. And Alyssa was following that pull. So I told her the only thing that felt honest. If you want to talk, I'll listen. I don't know what role I can play, but I'm here. The next few weeks were kind of surreal. Heather was released on bond but slapped with fraud charges, and her reputation in town, which was already shaky, took a full nosedive. Apparently, she'd been making side hustles out of fake fundraisers, sketchy loan applications, and even forging Alyssa's name on a few FAFSA documents. The whole case unraveled fast once the paternity fraud came to light. Meanwhile, Alyssa and I kept talking. She didn't ask me for money. She didn't guilt-trip me. She didn't even bring up the lawsuit again. She just wanted someone to talk to about her real life. How she was trying to keep up her grades, how her part-time job sucked, how she felt like her whole childhood was some weird performance her mom made her act in. And here's where things got even more complicated. One night she asked me if I ever met the other guy, the man Heather reconnected with after breaking up with me. Let's call him Brian. I had only met him once, in passing, at some college event. He was arrogant, smug, and honestly, Heather seemed like a completely different person around him. Alyssa told me she tried reaching out to him recently. He ghosted her. Wouldn't respond to texts. Didn't return calls. Didn't even deny being her biological father, just blocked her outright. And that's when the real moral dilemma hit me like a freight train. Alyssa asked, "Do I even have a dad? Or am I just some mistake everyone wants to forget?" And man, how do you answer that? How do you tell a teenager that she's not the problem, that it's the adults in her life who failed her? That biology isn't destiny, but neither is abandonment? I didn't have a neat, Pinterest-ready answer. All I could say was, "You're not a mistake. You were wanted, at least by me. Even if I didn't get to raise you." There was a long pause after that. Then finally, "Then can I call you sometimes? Just for advice? Or if I need to vent?" I said yes. Not because I suddenly saw myself as her dad, but because no one deserves to feel that alone. And maybe, just maybe, I could be a better man than the one who actually brought her into this world and ran the second she reached out. But here's the cliffhanger. Last night, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line: "I know what Heather told you. She's lying about more than you think." It was from a woman who claimed to be Heather's former roommate, back when she first found out she was pregnant. She said she had something that would change everything I thought I knew about Alyssa's paternity. Something Heather never wanted anyone to see. She attached a scan of an old journal entry, dated late 2005. And it had my name written in it. In bold. Circled. Underlined. I stared at that email for hours. The journal page attached wasn't long, just a couple paragraphs scrawled in messy handwriting. But the words were heavy. In it, Heather wrote about being scared. About not knowing who the father was. About how I was the only one who offered to stick around. I told Luke it wasn't his so he wouldn't feel trapped. But sometimes I wonder if I just didn't want to owe anyone anything. And then it said this: "If it is his, he deserves to know. But I'm not ready for that truth, not yet." The date? 2 weeks after Alyssa was born. I sat there, rereading that line like it might magically change. If it is his. I didn't know how to feel. Angry? Hurt? Hopeful? Because that's the thing. I had spent years accepting I wasn't her father. Built walls around that fact. Learned to live with it. And now, this journal entry cracked the foundation of all of it. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called Alyssa. "Hey," I said. "I need to tell you something. And I need you to hear all of it before you say anything." She was quiet. Just listening. I told her about the email. The journal. The fact that her mom might have lied to both of us. That there was still a question hanging in the air, and I wasn't willing to live in that gray area anymore. Her voice cracked when she asked, "So what does that mean?" "It means," I said, "if you're willing, I'd like to take a paternity test." Silence again. But this time, I could hear her breathing through it. Like she was thinking, processing. Then softly, "Okay. I want to know, too." The test itself was simple. A swab, a signature, a few days of waiting that felt like years. While we waited, Heather's fraud case continued spiraling. More victims came forward. Her lawyer tried to get her a plea deal, but the prosecutor had receipts, literal and metaphorical. It was looking like she'd do time. Alyssa stopped visiting her. Not because she was being cruel, but because she finally saw just how deep her mom's lies ran. She told me, "I don't think I hate her. But I think I need space from the version of myself she tried to create." Those words stuck with me. Because I realized I'd been doing the same thing for years, creating versions of the past to protect myself. To make sense of the heartbreak. Then the test results came. And everything shattered. Probability of paternity, 99.998%. I read it once. Twice. Out loud. In silence. I laughed. I cried. I genuinely didn't know how to feel. I just knew I'd never felt anything like this before. I called her again. When she answered, she said, "I already saw it." She sounded different. Not shocked. Not angry. Just relieved. "I think," she said, "I always knew." We met the next day. No big speech. No dramatic embrace. Just two people sitting across from each other, both trying to bridge the gap between what could have been and what still might be. I asked her if she wanted to live with me, just for a while, to figure things out, to get her footing with college and her part-time job. She said yes. And for the first time in years, my house didn't feel empty anymore. A few weeks later, Alyssa and I sat on the porch, kind of like the night this whole thing started. She handed me a folded piece of paper. A scholarship offer. Full ride. Based on her grades and an essay she'd submitted last minute. "I want to study social work," she said. "Help people like us, people who get lied to, left behind." And I swear, that was the moment I realized something important. Heather's lies didn't win. They almost did. But the truth has this stubborn way of coming up for air, no matter how deep you try to bury it. So yeah? My ex tried to sue me for college money for a kid I wasn't the father of. She ended up arrested. And I ended up with a daughter. A real one. Not perfect. Not planned. But real in every way that matters. Final thoughts. I still don't know if I'll ever fully forgive Heather. What she did hurt a lot of people, me, Alyssa, and even herself. But I also don't know if I'd have my daughter in my life today if not for all the chaos. Life's weird like that. If you're on the fence about whether to seek the truth, whether it's about paternity, family secrets, or just something that's haunted you, let me just say this. Ask. Push. Dig. You never know what love might be buried underneath the lies.